volunteers there that was really driving it. Currently, he is he's part of the Angel Prime team, which is an early stage fund that funds technology startups. So over to you, Sripati.
All right. Thank you very much for coming. And just a quick couple of housekeeping things, and I'll quickly ask the panelists to come forward and come over. So what we will do is we'll have the panelists introduce themselves, and then after that I have a series of questions with the idea of which is to keep this a fairly interactive session. Make sure that the things which the 2 or 3 top of mind items that you as entrepreneurs think about when you're looking at business plans do get answered. So I'll ask a bunch of questions. I'll also keep about 10-15 minutes in the end, around 2:45, so that we can actually go and get questions. I do want to make sure that, as I said, let's think about the top 1 or 2 things if they're not answered, to have a frank conversation with each of our panelists. Okay, without further ado, let me start getting IVK. If you could just grab a seat. Akash, Tushar, and we have one more entrepreneur who's running Tardy. So we'll give him a hard time when minute on yourself and what you do and so forth.
Yeah, my name is Vijay Kumar. I'm known as IVK in the industry. As an entrepreneur, I have a startup in Singapore, which I co-founded with others in Singapore in big data analytics. That's my day job. I also have a startup where I'm a promoter, but I'm not operationally involved. It's in augmented reality and robotics. As an investor, I'm a member of Indian Angel Network, and I'm also a partner with Acumen Fund on social impact ventures. In the earlier career, I was Wipro CTO. So I think that's a short summary of my profile.
Thanks, IVK.
Hey, this is Akash Gupta from Grey Orange. I basically lead technology at Grey Orange. Grey Orange is basically a hardware-based startup that gives warehousing solutions to upcoming e-commerce companies as well as companies like Reebok, Nike, and retail industries. So yeah, that's we basically have 2 products. A sortation system and something called Butler system, which basically help in automating warehouses.
Hi all, I'm Tushar. I'm the co-founder of Healthify Me. It's India's first digital fitness platform. We've got our flagship app that helps you track your calories and your nutritive values of whatever you eat in Indian foods, and nutritionists and trainers that look at your data and guide you. We help people. We've helped over 30,000 people now in the last 12-15 months lose weight, get fitter, and achieve their wellness objectives. And we've recently launched our own wearable as well, which I'm wearing right now. So we've raised our first seed round about 18 months back, 20 months back, when we were still at a very early prototype kind of a stage, and we've kept ourselves afloat since then, raising several bridge rounds, etc. So happy to talk about those.
Thanks. Stating a personal experience. So I started Snapfish back in '99 when at the height of the .com boom, where it was rather easy to raise money. Might be the similar situation now, but wanted to tell you a little bit about the business plan aspect there. So we had a slide up there. So Snapfish was in the online photo space, so take pictures, share it, stuff like that. And one slide said that, what are you going to do? What's your ambition? And we said, we will kill Kodak. So this was 1999. And it so happened, way after that, back in Jazz, chair is waiting for you.
Force wait.
Yeah, come on in here. That 10 years later, Kodak did go bankrupt, which is like the whole irony of it. And I think we had a little bit to do with it, but not a whole lot. But I was thinking about whether it was a smart thing to put that kind of stuff in a business plan. And I would posit no. Because if you put stuff like that, it sounds cocky, audacious, and actually not believable. So I would say that it turned out to be okay, but actually was not the smartest thing to do. I picked up something else, which was a slide which is part of Dropbox's application to Y Combinator. Okay. And back in 2007, we all know what Dropbox is, $8-10 billion valuation and everything. So this is a one slide pitch for Y Combinator. And if I look at that, right, it's not flashy, it's not, trying to make a complicated structure. It's talking about what it is doing, what is the solution, what is the model they are using, and what they really are asking for. Right? And it is a very interesting thing in terms of the point I wanted to make is business plan is not about the presentation, right? The business plan really is about what work has been done prior to that stage. And of course, the goal of the business plan is to go ahead and then communicate it, right? And this is an example of one slide pitch, which probably does a very good job because a lot of work has actually gone behind it. And there is this whole host of very interesting things about how Dropbox actually went ahead and did stuff following this. But thought that might be illustrative and somewhat interesting for us to watch. Jas, since you missed the introduction, could you actually give a 2-minute introduction of yourself and the company?
Calling me in the last minute, I think. I did not respond to an email, so that's my fault anyway. I'm Jasminder. I co-founded Now Floats with 3 other co-founders, and we essentially bring small businesses online in a very, very simple way, which is highly discoverable and highly updatable. So we actually help small businesses get a website which is generated through SMSs and is updated through an SMS or apps, and it's highly discoverable. We have a very different engagement model with small business. We understand them very, very well. So we are basically at the flip side of this top level pitch. We are trying to generate a lot of location-based data from these small businesses, and we're trying to aggregate that. So that's what we do.
So, Jas, could you also talk about what funding you had or have had, which is publicly known? So,
Sure. So we, if you want to just talk quickly about the journey on the funding stage, we got angel invested in about 7 months of starting up, and that was through Mumbai Angels. And just before the 7 months, just 2 months before that, we had raised a very small family and friends round, which was a very tiny one, but just the well-wishers round. We did that, and then mid last year, Mumbai Angels they did another round with us along with Bloom Ventures. So that's where, and we're just closing the Series A round.
Okay, this is all going to be very helpful because one of the things which from the entrepreneurs I would like to encourage you to share with our audience here is it's much more useful now to look back upon the kind of things which you have done in terms of your pitches and the conversations you had when you're actually doing that initial pitch, and what has changed and what went right. But more importantly, it would be very helpful if you're candid about what went wrong, because I think a lot of the learning really is from those kinds of things. So perhaps, Ivike, I can start with you first. You must have seen, as investors, you see a lot of business plans, right? You're seeing maybe a couple a day, but some business plans stick in terms of some pitches stick in mind in terms of, okay, I really do remember this, and those are usually the more successful ones. Can you share maybe one such, in your case, a pitch that you remember and why?
So maybe I'll mention 2 examples, but I cannot name the company. But I give maybe some kind of a explanation of why I liked it. I think most of the pitches we see, they come under 2 categories. One of them is a classical horizontal play, which is normally a tech play, but applicable to many sectors, many industry sectors. So some of those pitches which I came across, I found some of them are quite interesting, especially say in media space, because especially if it is something like video, it is in general a horizontal play. You cannot do it unless you have a very high algorithmic value to add. So things, you can say it's my personal preference, but I think those are things which I like. I think it's an important point for a horizontal player, which you can defend yourself with some kind of an IPR, which is deeper but applicable to many sectors or many verticals. On the other side, I would say a domain-specific, pitch, whether it is retail, whether it is again media industry. I liked a few there. I think I'll pick one example in a broadcast industry, basically the television and integration with home, especially the ad spends and the ad usage. Again, it's a little bit of I would say, an insight of how it works. Because I think the problem is normally the domain knowledge, unless you have actually worked in that area, is very difficult to craft a value prop in it. I think I kind of liked one of the media pitches because the team came from a very good experience in that industry. It may not be very tech. I mean, maybe the tech is maybe commoditized, but then they picked the good traction and maybe a good value prop. One more maybe in the retail example, I found one of the pitches where they show something which connects very well to the pain area of the customer rather than something into the future. So a lot of pitches we see, they're all about what can happen if you take this, right? It's about future scenarios. But some of them, while they do have a future scenario, their starting point will be very hard hitting on a pain area where you cannot basically, reject or refuse that idea. It connects very well. And once you are hooked on, you'll go in that path. I think those are the two traits I would pick from whatever I've seen.
Fair enough. So you're saying that, hey, the team had the domain expertise which came through, and second, it was less of a vision of the future, but something which is here and now, which you can also identify with. Akash, let me change tacks a little bit and ask, just roll back the reel a little bit, and you are still, maybe tinkering with your idea, because yours is a hardware play. It's got robots running around and so forth today, right? Looks very complicated and sophisticated. But there was a time when it wasn't, when this was an idea, and you're actually trying to now convince somebody else that this is viable. So what was the process you went through, and what ended up being the output of one of these things?
Okay, so just to go back a little, we raised our first round after around 12 months of when we started. So I think we were playing with a lot of things there. Initially we went into education, didn't like the space that much, didn't enjoy it. We did this for 2 months, 3 months, but realized that wasn't our cup of tea, and then did custom products for different companies, and then figured out that every day we are doing a very different kind of technology product, and hence figured out that okay, this is something that we like but won't be able to kind of capitalize as a business. And then finally we came down to that, let's try and choose an industry where we could use our kind of skills to create a product and then grow that product. So one thing that we really wanted to do was that do a product that had V1, V2, V3, so the product gets on improving with the time, right? So you can reach to a very good product at the end of 3-year or a 4-year cycle, right? So, and one thing I think that even IBK mentioned is that one very important I would say milestone in our whole journey was that while we were looking for this industry, someone from our BITS alumni, what he did was he asked us to visit one of the warehouse of one of the young e-commerce company, and just asked us to see and tell what can we do about it, right? So I and Samay, it was just a 5-people team then. We haven't raised any money. We were just kind of doing workshops. The money was fine at workshops, but so I and Samay went into this warehouse in Mahipalpur, right? And we entered the warehouse, and we always imagined, due to YouTube videos and everything, we always imagined warehouses to be highly technical and with conveyors and everything, right? And we entered warehouse, and it was a shock our lives. All the items were on the floor and returns were not going down and things like that, right? So I think that was something that really clicked us, that yes, it is a really big customer pain, right? Because we have been doing a lot of works on robotics, but warehousing was new to us that time. We were looking at warehousing as a sector, so this was something that really helped us to take a decision in terms of what we really want to concentrate on, right? So I think if you can get an instance or in your whole journey, get a point where you important part of the pitch. So, just to share a few instances, whenever, we talk to people, we always started from the first part of our journey where we did not enjoy things that we were doing. So, I think that, now I can say that would show that we won't do anything. We would only do things that we would enjoy, and hence things that you enjoy would really, give your all and with all your passion. So that is one thing important. And another, connecting your pitch to whatever, you don't need to, and it's always good to not have, a pill, but to solve a problem of the customer, right? So if you can connect your pitch to a big problem of the customer and industry, I think that's something that really, really helps in having a successful.
So the first pitch which you did, right? Because this is not like a traditional thing when you have him solving a warehouse problem with hardware and software. So tell me that you're presenting to your first investor. You don't have to name who the investors are. How did it go? I mean, like, were they looking at you like you're trying to build this company in India? Like, what's going on?
So I think that's something that is slowly changing in India. But I very well remember we were pitching to a couple of people. We have just got through this idea that we'll make this super complex system that will take control of the complete warehouse, right? So and warehouse being a back end of the companies, it's a very, very important thing, right? If you if you fail even a day, then you're gonna lose 20,000 customers, right? So everyone is really, really serious when you talk about back end of the warehouse. So, and we I think that was one mistake from our side, which we finally broke in different steps and then presented it later. But we kind of had a slide which said that we're gonna kind of change the complete warehouse, take the control from as soon as the inventory enters in and as soon as the packet goes out, right? Although we do the system that we are in and we are kind of running right now does all of it, but I think with that kind of a hardware product in India, you will definitely face a few frowns. But then we would realize that what we need to do is you split it into different steps and tell them that this is how get to a prototype stage. And I think one important thing that we learned after this is our first slide of our this whole thing used to be a timeline. Okay, so it used to be a timeline which would say that this is our plan for next 2 years, and we would always keep the last 6 months as well, and we would show genuinely that in last 6 months we had planned this, right, and this is what we achieved and this is what we failed at, right? And I think even till Series A round we kept that whole timeline journey, and we marked wherever we failed and we kind of marked green where we succeeded. So I think if you can show that you can make a plan and execute 60% of it, 70% of it, because obviously doing 100% of it would be something very tough. But if you can execute 60-70% of it, and you can show this to a person in the seed round or in the your Series A round, I think that would be really, really effective. So I think that's pretty much that worked for us.
Thanks, that's very helpful. Tushar, very different company, very different problem. What was your experience when you started the process?
So I would broadly classify that the experience varies very different when you're extremely early stage to when you are slightly later. And I've had very different experience there. In the very early stage, to many of you who are probably looking at just having an idea or a concept or a prototype and need some very early angel capital, which a lot of us hide as friends and family, but frankly, friends and family cannot support the kind of capital you might need as prototype, right? So that whole friends and family angel round, our approach to that was a relatively pitchless pitch, right? That was very visionary, kind of a 2-3 slider concept. What is it that we're trying to solve? What pain point, as Akash mentioned also, is they're trying to solve, and we took it to certain experts in the field and got them on as advisors and converted them from advisors to then subsequently as investors. So the process which I discovered, especially because we are a very early stage startup, and investors like Sequoia and others out there seem like very lofty and very hard to reach, or even IAN and Mumbai Angels, you might not feel very comfortably reaching out and standing up. You don't have that kind of traction at that point. I think it's a good idea from my experience to raise a to talk to people who are important to your industry. In my case, it was doctors, nutritionists, wellness experts. I actually literally technology experts that I knew in the field. Reached out to them, pitched the idea to them, just with a couple of sliders of what the concept is, what the market is. The market is huge. I mean, wellness, fitness in India is a huge market that's growing very rapidly. Almost half the people in this very room, including to an extent me, are overweight. So the market is very much out there. There are offline services that are providing this. That's also out there. So can you create a digital platform to disrupt it? That was the concept. I took it to the advisors. We were able to raise about 1 crore funding about 18-20 months back based on that as a convertible note. And that was a very meager pitch. I think the second stage, which is something I have experienced more recently and I'm going through right now, is when you have financial investors. These are suave investors who are backed by LPs and other people to drive return on investment on their investment. So you can't just pitch a concept to them, you have to provide actual economics to them. In that, the few realizations I've had, and I'm sort of summing all these up, Sripad,
absolutely.
is that one key concept I realized was keep it simple. And focus on one thing, right? Or maybe maximum 2 things, but certainly not more than that. Like what he was also saying is when early on we start up, we think about we're going to change the world in a very large variety of ways. Even like something as specific as a warehouse can be further compartmentalized into many things. So similarly for us also, we were trying to address 4 different markets. We were trying to work with gymming, slimming, medical, corporate wellness kind of market areas, and we realized that pitching multiple things can get very confusing, because at the end of the day with a serious financial investor you have maybe 20 minutes to prove your case, and in those 20 minutes if you try to diffuse by talking about so many things, it doesn't work out. You may have two of these things that you want to experiment post the fund close. That's also okay, but you don't have to talk about them right now, right? Certain things you can keep it to yourself. So keeping it simple and focused was very key for us. And the second thing was driving clear economic sense was also very important to us. This is not something I realized. I'm an ex-investment banker, so it was very easy for me to create complex financial models and show how this thing is going to work, etc. And that's what I did when I initially started up. And those too many numbers realized that unnecessarily the conversation goes in areas that you don't want to go, and assumptions start being questioned. So instead of that, if you can drive very clear economic sense, which in our case ended up being down to only literally 3 numbers, which was what is your average revenue per user now, ARPU, versus what you can be, what's the path to delivering that. So ARPU was key. And what's your customer acquisition cost, CAC, CAC, right? At the end of the day, if you spend on marketing, what do you need to spend to acquire a customer? If you can clearly show that the ARPU minus CAC is a significant value, right, an Indian market, and is something that you are proving or have proven, you hit that's it. That's the only financial metrics that matter to us. Showing ARPU on one side, showing CAC on the other side. And finally, that's the simple economics that sort of drove with the investors. So, instead of doing those complex analyses and multiple markets, we had to simplify our pitch, and we had to drive very clear economic sense in the pitch. And I've seen that add a lot of traction with investors now as compared to my older pitch.
Very helpful. Jess?
Sure. So I think I'll just almost resonate what these people are saying, and just say it in my own language and add a couple of points. So the fact that he went into a warehouse is a great opening statement in the pitch, right? You've got people's attention. I went to a warehouse, take a picture of that warehouse. You're almost got the person's first 5 minutes of attention, right? So that's a very critical aspect of what he's saying, which I'm essentially saying is homework. If you're not going to go sit, we serve small, medium businesses, really small. We pride on the fact that one Panwala is also online through us, and the fact is that you have to do that yourself. If you don't do it yourself and then don't go to the pitch room, taking that experience with you, it'll show on your face. It'll be very visible. So you'll have to get your hands dirty at the early stage, and it changes as Tushar pointed out. It will change. Your pitch will change almost 10 times by the time you reach a financial investor. So you have to get your hands dirty, and it'll show in your pitch first. That's I think the other thing is because an early stage entrepreneur, all of us are very we've got 30 things happening in our head. We all of us can, he can put an Excel sheet of, probably 500 pages, and it won't be enough. The aim is to, I think, pace yourself really well with an investor. Prepare 50 slides, but present only 5. Right? Standard rule of life. But prepare 50 so badly that you know all the slides deeply, which means if the question comes, and then stop. Present your 5 slides and pause, absolutely say that's my pitch, that's I'm finished, I'm done, that's my pitch, and just, keep your mouth shut for some time. And we don't do that as Indians, by the way. We look at the face and he's not looking very comfortable with my pitch. Chalo chhati slide bhi de deta hu. I think he's not biting what I'm saying. 7th slide also. Hey, don't do that, guys. Stop. You have to stop with your pitch and say, this is what and somebody gave me this advice. He says, your attitude, Jazz, when you pitch has to be in your head कि मैं तो कर ही रहा हूँ, तुम्हें आना तो बता दो. Right? He said that you have to go like that. मैं तो कर ही रहा हूँ ये. Right? You will not, and it's not arrogance. He said in your head you have to internalize this so badly that that passion has to show. And I remember that always when somebody said that to me, a very knowledgeable and known investor in the country. He said, just your tone has to be that, because if you're not getting that reciprocation from the other side and you're still talking, then then maybe it's not the right place, right? And in 20 minutes is tops, you will find out this way or that way. But after the 5 slides, when you pause and a question comes, if one question comes and you can go to slide number 31 and show that answer, you made a significant next level discussion. That a question came and say, hold on, here's that slide. Another question, slide number 26. Say, here's what I feel about that. I think those things really help in doing a pitch. Finally, I think and this happened, one of those things which happens in life, right? We, as everybody changes, we all look at feedback from market. We create something. Our vision was this, and market says something else, and you change a little bit. And I call it, millions of mini pivots, millions of them. So one of the things which happened to us was, we were going to Microsoft's BizSpark Challenge in June 2000. The product was something else. We were doing something else. And then in the train journey between Hyderabad and Bangalore, 3 of us said, ye pitch kare, ya ye pitch kare. We were in the middle of, we were not getting feedback from A. A was not resonating and B was about to start resonating. So we said, should we still go hit this pitch or shall we go change this a little bit because this is resonating? Then we actually went to, this guest house in Domlur and signed up the guest house guy as a customer and took his picture and showed it next morning. And he said he just paid us 4,000 rupees, which he did, right? We took the money that night. So the aim was, if you see, it's just one of those things which happen in life. So what I'm trying to do is make sure you have one, either, in your case, a large company who's agreed to, buy a solution, in your case, some users, but make sure you get the first user before the pitch. That I think is a very vital thing. At the second stage of your pitch, you should get a real user in your hand with a face, with a name, Domlur, Shripati, his business, his guest house. We spoke to him last night. He gave us 4,000 rupees. You got to do that.
Very helpful. So let me pick up a few of the points here which I really resonated with. All very interesting stories and different ones. One is what Jazz says, have a story, because people remember stories, they don't remember slides. The second thing to remember is that as an entrepreneur, you're way smarter than the investor. This is something to realize because you have spent a lot more time on that in that particular domain. And the investor on the other side has got ADD because attention deficit disorder. They're like looking at this, thinking about somebody else, some CEO is quitting in my earlier company. How am I going to deal with it? That SMS has come in the middle of the meeting, right? So they might actually be highly distracted. The 5-slide thing, the 2-slide thing. See, look at the density here is actually quite small. Remember that. The other stuff which Akash mentioned, the background. Super important. I would say that one thing which I've found entrepreneurs not actually spending enough time on is their own journey. And it is the missteps which are actually the most interesting because there is a motherload of data or information which is sitting there which talks to you about some entrepreneurs come and say, hey, I started this company, I grew it to this level, I didn't find it that interesting and then I moved on. So just in that particular statement, a whole bunch of information is there as far as the investor is concerned. It tells you about, well, the entrepreneurs, this is the bar for this entrepreneur. 1, he actually knew how to build a small business. 2, he really believes in when he says he's scaling, he actually is true to it. That's why he didn't continue that business. For example, this was just a interaction I had yesterday. So what I'm trying to say is that don't undersell your journey, even though you might find it boring. Others might not find it boring. Okay.
Has Tushar shared his personal journey? I mean, that also, you haven't said that, right? Yeah. So I think that's a very important point. Like, Akash, your journey of the warehouse, my journey of the Parma, and I don't know if you guys know, Tushar had his own personal journey, which he survived on 32 rupees a day because the government said that
There was a
poverty line.
poverty
is 32
line.
rupees. So he lived that a month. And that became such a powerful metaphor when he used to pitch. He's not telling you this for some reason, but became a story for when he entered. It became a story for him that hey, you did this. You had you left your job. You did you just went to a village to survive at 32 rupees, and that it's a example of the passion, right? What I'm saying, you have to show one example in that story of yourself, your personal journey. So,
Fair enough. So Avika, let me turn back to you. So we talked about things which stuck with you, but how about red flags, right? You see something and you say, brother, I think I want to end this meeting. Is there anything which you would call a red flag?
Maybe I would say maybe just extend the previous discussion to just one more finer point. I think just like entrepreneurs who are generally immersive in the problem domain, and it shows in their passion and commitment and even the tone of their expression. Most of the angel investors are also like that, right? We don't invest in an entity where I can't get involved. If I don't have to get involved, then I can as well invest in a mutual fund. Why bother? So I think there is a slight difference between angel type of investment versus, say, venture capital. So while I think the insights and the involvement from entrepreneurs are very good, generally we used to find that one thing which is a possible red flag, it's a very fine line between passion and commitment versus arrogance. Because one of the quick checks at angel level is, as they often say, you bet on the jockey, not on the horse. Right? So if the person is not coachable, or they box themselves into a tight corner and they say that's how it is, then I think it is a bit of a red flag. Now, I know that I can maybe talk about Indian Angel Network. I assume that is how other angel networks work as well. In a meeting of an angel network where there's a pitch, it's an unfair setting. Unlike venture capital where I can go and look at the profiles of the partners, here you don't know who is going to come. So on one fine day, you happen to have 4 guys who are from that area. If you make such statements, you will be in serious trouble because they will say, no, that doesn't work that way. I spent 2 decades in this. So I think it is an unfair setting when you are trying to pitch. So I think it is, I would say, advantage invested there. So I think it will be good to show a little bit of modesty and humbleness while you show your conviction and how well you know the problem. So I would say maybe that will be the first red flag. See, at such an early stage, it's very difficult to go and ask, your cash flow projections, your, growth projections. It's only an estimate to the best of their knowledge. So we normally look at positioning, offering, defensible IP, and coachability of team. So I think the team dynamics, or the core team, I would say. If we think that we're really, hard-nosed and they think that's the only way to do it, maybe they're right, but I think we will have a little difficulty in, trying to pursue the deal. I would say maybe I will pick that as the first one.
Fair enough. Well, let me turn to the entrepreneurs here, and I want to ask a question which I think anybody who's pitching would be concerned about, which is, what goes through your mind when you hear a no? Right? You have gone ahead, you have prepared, you have gone ahead and pitched, and the investor says, for whatever reason, it's like telling a parent your baby is ugly. Nobody likes to hear that. So what, as and when maybe you succeeded in your very first pitch, in which case this probably wouldn't apply. But as and when you heard a no from an investor, what was the thought process in your mind, and what did you say, okay, I'm going to do differently or next or whatever it is?
Right, so I think I didn't hear a no in our first round, but second round, we were, not that lucky, right? So I think the first thing that comes in the mind is what what exactly is missing, because when you are so deeply immersed into your product and you very very well know that this is what's going to solve the problem, right? I think it's the first frustration I would say that comes in your mind is that what exactly is missing, right? Means I think and there are few things related when you hear a no from the investor, right? As soon as you give your pitch, give your fifth slide, right? If the person in front of you doesn't come back and discuss about the risk that are involved, right? If he says that all is good, I think that's a no, right? That's a no right there, because anyone who would be really really interested in going deep into the business, the first thing that at least for me, the first questions that would come up is okay, tell me this, you are in India and the ecosystem for hardware is almost zero, right? How would you solve this, right? So I think if those very important risk questions don't come to you, even if investor says yes or he says that we're going to talk later or something like that, it's pretty much a no. You realize that he did not even discuss about one of your risk, and that means that it's a no. So I think one important thing that always went on my mind is that what is missing. If you are convinced about your team, your product in the market, then I think then you are conveying your thoughts in a wrong way, right? So that's one thing that comes in your mind normally, is that I think it's very tough to think at that point of time that it's not gonna work out, because you've been working way too hard to think that it's not gonna work out, right? So the only thing that came ever to my mind is that what's missing, and let's sit back and think how do we need to be more convincing about the thought that we have regarding the future of the company.
Tushar?
Yeah, I mean, I think every no was a great learning opportunity for me, and we learned a lot in that process. By that, I mean, we got a lot of no's, and I think I'm personally never that disappointed by no's, because it's just the rule of acceptance of anything new, right? That the probabilities are low. I mean, the industry standard for a sales pitch to a conversion of a paying client in general in B2B segment is 15%, right? So if you try to sell, you have to at least try to pitch to 6 or 7 companies if you want to get one closed deal, right? In B2B sales, that's the usual. So I don't see why investors should be different, right? And it's got nothing to do with the fact that your product is bad or your company is wrong. I don't think you should feel dejected at all. I really do not think I was dejected by any no, because I do understand that at least if I have to get one yes, I have to get 6 to 7 VC meetings. If I have to get 3 yeses to compare term sheets and evaluate, I have to make sure I get 18 VC meetings. Now there are no 18 VCs only in India, so that means that it is a tough place, and you have to keep those expectations in mind, right? It's like applying to college applications in the US. I mean, there's no reason why Harvard selected you and Stanford didn't. It's a black box, so there's nothing wrong with your product. What you can do, however, is I think the best thing the VCs I've really respected are those who give me very good and detailed feedback. So that's something I used to genuinely smile and ask for, saying, okay, well, glad to know that you're going to pass. No worries at all. We'll keep you posted in the future, but please give me detailed feedback on what you thought was missing, right, in what I communicated. And I used to hate the VCs who used to give me, it's somehow the market is not there, or you have a great team, but we need to see more traction. I mean, those are very obvious statements, but there are some VCs out there that gave me very good feedback. One of them, where I had a partnership level meeting in Bombay, excellent feedback they gave me. There's the one who actually told me that, look, that we think everything is right, everything is going where it should be, but you need to present it very, very differently. I used to have a 35-pager deck. They were like, you need to have a 12-pager deck, and you need to not try to fill everything in. What I was trying to do was I was trying to anticipate all the risk factors and present them to the investors. They're like, don't do that. To Jazz's point over here, pick those 5 slides, maximum 10, certainly no more than 12, and say what you have to in a very simple, soft manner. Let them react, let them ask those questions, and go to. So that was a very big learning for me, and I think and that has improved my. I mean, if I see my own pitches over the last 12 months, you can see huge improvement in them, and how you present. And I think that's true across platform, and that'll help you in your sales also, in life in general, is keep things very, very simple. Humans can't digest more than a very little amount of information that you say. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, clearly, seen too many rejections. And I think, as I think again resonate, it's unfair that I get the third.
Next time I'm going to just reverse the
No, so it's exactly the same. I think it's absolutely the same, right? I mean, every rejection is an opportunity to find out, what went wrong. And some of these VCs will give you that detailed feedback. And that again is a very positive thing, because if somebody spent another 10 minutes with you, 15, even half an hour if possible, with you to give you that feedback, then you actually are going to keep that person on the radar, because he's actually giving you feedback for you to improve and come back, right? And there's no means only a stage no. It is no only for today, right? I mean, if you get traction that night, you can go back almost tomorrow morning and say, I've got something. So I think it's you have to, and frankly, I mean, as entrepreneurs, I mean, VC saying no is one of the no's you will get in your life. You'll get 100 more every day. So I think somewhere you get so much in the rejection mode in the early stage. There's just so many no's happening, right? I can't even tell you. I think you internalize this to become stronger. Every no is just making you stronger and saying, okay, tomorrow's another day. I mean, you do get very disappointed in life, but I think the only way is to accept the no and really deeply understand why the no was there. Spend time in understanding the no and just hone yourself, make the better pitch. And sometimes even we've tried one thing very well is the person who said no to us, we asked the reason and then sent a repitch tomorrow morning saying, can you just see if this is okay? Continue saying no, we understand that, but I'm pitching to somebody else. So help me. So just small, engagement. I think it's all engagement, right? You have to, there's a way to, because, it's tough for these VCs to give you feedback. They don't have time, as you're rightly pointing out. It's very difficult for him to, after he said a no, to open another slide deck to give you feedback. So,
Yeah.
So just to continue that point, what you might want to do now, this is again, if you have some maturity in your business, or if you have some really good advisors who can connect you, is make a calendar of your pitches, right? Or like literally you'll have to go meet, say, 10 investors, right? Have a broad idea of when you're going to meet which group of investors. And, no offense to investors, but, structure them as tier A, tier B, tier C. And start with the tier C first. Because honestly speaking, by the time to come to your tier A investors, you would have dramatically improved, right? So start with the bottom 1/3 investors that you really don't want their money to come in, but they're really good practice areas, right? Then go to the actual matches and then go for the final ones, right? So, I mean, these are some of the tricks you can use, but it's not easy to do that given we are in India, investors are few, and sometimes it's not up to us to create the calendar. So, but to the extent you can, or if you can't do that, go play a practice match with some of your advisors. Point is, practice your pitch. That's that's the bottom line, right? So there are a lot of times where I walk cold. I mean, I trust my ability to sell and pitch on the fly. That's what I enjoy doing anyway. So sometimes it's like, okay, I have deck prepared. I'm just gonna go with it tomorrow. But that doesn't work out in the investments. It has to be a very well, perfectly practiced kind of a pitch. So if you don't have the tier A, tier B, tier C thing, go find some advisors, mentors, seek some time, including any of us, by the way, if you're interested, or Shripati. Certainly Shripati more than any of us. Just send him an email, seek some time, get on a call for 10 minutes. Everybody's happy to give feedback, but you will learn a lot from that.
Here's a great point. So the couple of things which, let me just summarize a little bit here, which stuck in my head, is that the practice speeches, I actually noted it down as they were talking. So practice, right? Because when you're talking, just hearing yourself, you'll realize some of the things which are just not sticking, right? It's just not sounding convincing. It cannot overstate that. The second thing is that the investors seldom say no as in N-O, no, right? Because they're always in the business of creating option values open. So it's say, sounds interesting, let's actually talk after some time. Or not spend enough time asking about risks. Right? Those are all hints that the investor has not spent enough time, not vested enough in that business. Because if you think about it, the investor is the one who's writing a big check. And the dynamics between the investor and the entrepreneur is the most skewed before the check, after the check. This is how it is between the investor and the entrepreneur, okay? After you've written the check, you're running behind the entrepreneur. Boss, what's happening? Is it traction, no traction, what's going on, right? Before you have written the check, the entrepreneur is chasing. So it is understandable that the investors are actually very, they would say no, maybe, whatever. But if they're really interested in writing the check, they will spend the time.
Yeah.
They really ought to spend the time. And that's reading the tea leaves, right? You understand. And to Tushar's point about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 thing is, if someone's not showing too much interest, pursuing is probably not going to help either. So it's an understanding part. The second thing I would say is that maybe it's time to move on to another investor, right? If someone's not showing, because sometimes some investors get it, some investors are more likely to get your business, other investors are less likely to get your business, sort of like a DNA of the investors. And trying to actually, in one sense, just as you segment your customers and pick one, you can segment your investors and say this one is much more likely to, right? There's a cultural match. These guys are, I'm a high-tech business, I'm a hardware kind of business. These guys are actually not intimidated by hardware. They're probably likely to understand. I mean, a healthcare thing, these guys have shown us somewhat of a inclination to do it, right? And finally, point with both Jazz and Tushar brought up, it's okay to follow up. I will say that's one thing which I have seen is the entrepreneurs just move on very quickly. Set up the pitch, I did the pitch, now I'm on to the next one. But the thing is, there's no need to close off this story. If you actually follow up, interesting things happen, because they're also sending a message to the investor that, you know, this is an important meeting which we just had, and I'm actually keeping track of this. And just shows that you're just a lot more organized, right, in just your general things. Okay, so that was, I wanted to just summarize what I was hearing, but there's a question there, actually. Are you still interested in asking the question?
Yeah, I was just saying, right now if you wake up, you wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can pitch. It's become like that. Wanted to ask you, did any of your investors, I mean, they can be joint ventures, PE funds, and any of those, have been, you felt that he said no because he thought the idea was tremendously good and he would like to discuss with his friends and start on his own? Because there were two kinds of points that came out from both of you. One was little disappointing, should I do something better, what did I miss out? The other was, it gives me the knowledge, I feel gung-ho, one down, no problem. This is a very unique situation that we faced. The feeling that we got from the guy was, we had a 72-page presentation. We presented all of them, and pretty much he could have started the company with that presentation. We had all our so-called secrets in it, and we wanted to be nice and good. And the feeling that we got out was that looks like he's going to start himself. That was scary. Instead of an investor, we created a competition. Have you felt that? Because the idea was damn good.
So I think I speak for the panel. None of us have probably experienced that in our experience. But having said that, and maybe Shripati, you can respond to it better. I do know of a couple of stories in the Bay Area, though, of a friend of mine who literally, I think good VCs do a good job of keeping information within Chinese walls. I think on the other hand, I have been careful, for example, to not pitch to a certain investor which are also invested in a competition of mine or a perceived competition of mine. That's something that's the only thing that I try to avoid. I don't think I faced that situation where I feel like the investor might themselves start something. I think most investors that we talk to are VC funds that typically you would not expect these guys to do that. But yes, I do. I'm a little bit careful, and in one or two cases where I felt that risk is there, that was the first thing I discussed with them. That this risk is there. How are we going to address it? Exactly. They're like, okay, no, that's a different partner, something like that. Gave me some assurance. I have seen of cases in the US. Where the investor was invested in a competitor, and the entrepreneur was pitching, and they sent the deck out to the investor, and the investor actually forwarded it to the competitor. So even though that's not very professional or ethical, I have anecdotally heard that this has happened in the Bay Area. But maybe Shripati, you can respond to.
Yeah, I just want to take a few more questions, Tushar. So I think that's a great answer, by the way. I think which is, when you choose your investor, think of the competition.
2 nights not sleeping, thinking that all is lost because he's got the money, and now he's got a detailed plan as well, and it was scary.
You don't have to be scared. Is all I can say. Just don't be scared.
I think one comment I have is, the investors are expected to show some professional ethics, but normally in an angel network, it is quite possible that you have invested in companies which are in the similar domain, similar offering. So as they say, it's a full and fair disclosure. At least in IAN, we'll say that once we are the 3-4 slides down, we know that it is a similar area. We generally say that we have similar investment and we can go ahead, but just be aware. And if we happen to shortlist them for further diligence, that subgroup will not be from the people who invested. In fact, I'm in another group where I'm actually doing a diligence on some company where it would have been very good if the other two were there, but they invested in a similar one. Similar, not same. But we don't know the similarity, because the problem on a horizontal play or a technical play is, if I ask more questions, they say, that's our IP. Now, I don't know what that IP is till I know. I cannot really make a comment. They say, okay, so I said, so do you have any patents filed? We are in the process of filing. So can you tell me which subclass you are filing? Because I at least know the area then. So it becomes a little complicated, but in general, we found that there are very few algorithmic plays where this gets discussed like this. Most of the offerings we see where it is in a competition is on the execution play. If it is normally a domain-centric solution where anybody can do it, it's a question of who does it faster.
Okay.
Whereas in technical, you have some kind of defense.
I'll take two more questions because I think I've got the signal from Sundi there. Yeah.
More of aspirational requirement product, not as a solving a burning problem. You might very well disagree with me. But when you knock the investors' doors, the first question they ask usually is, what is the burning problem that you're solving? So like, what are the difficulties that you faced when you had to explain, okay, what Healthify is about and why they have to fund? And what are your arguments exactly, and how did you support your arguments? Like, did you show some data, like, okay, these are the traction I have and all stuff?
See, in my opinion, there are very few burning problems out there, because if there is truly a burning problem, somebody would have put water on it. Right? So most of the problems are indeed genuine good problems, but it's more about, is it burning for you or not? That's where it really comes out to, right? To me, it was definitely very burning. I moved back to India after my investment banking job, and then I gained 18 kilos within 1 year of being here. And I'm like, this is what India does to me. Looked around, you've got 200 million people, and then that's what data helps. So 200 million people in our country are hypertensive. 80 million are diabetic. 150 million people are clinically obese. So the fact that there are that many people who live in urban India, right, and most of these people also overlap with people who have propensity to pay. They are already spending more than $2 billion in weight loss linked and wellness services, going to the likes of VLCCs, Gold's Gym, etc., that themselves are more than 1,000 crore companies now. So you can see that there is a genuine market out there which people are spending on, and a problem that they are spending for. And they are going to Medanta, Manipal and Apollo and other clinics, etc., also paying for services linked to their lifestyle diseases. So certainly it was a well-identified problem out there that I could personally relate to. So for me it was burning, and the way I sort of described burning was by the strength of the data around it. I said, look, this is a huge problem. It's largely driven offline. My job is, can I disrupt it in an online environment? Right? So the only thing I had to prove was that I have the capability to disrupt that market, not that the market is there or not. That's a default assumption that I could prove.
Fair enough.
So I think that's true for any industry, that you can sort of build that case around it.
One more question. Okay.
Build that case around it.
One more question. Okay. That takes one from the back. Sorry, if there is one. Yeah.
Questions to everybody on the dais. What else would you be looking for VC besides funding, right? So in your personal experiences, right, when you go to VCs, you're looking for funding. But we being a fairly mature startup, 2 years old startup with a pretty good traction out there, and we were looking at funding as well. So besides funding, what other different areas in VCs or the investors, in your companies, respective companies, have helped you besides the funding part? And how can you really, check VCs that whether they can help you on those different areas or not, like scaling and tapping up different opportunities?
I'll just share one anecdote from my journey. So I think one thing that from the very beginning that we always were learning, do that VC understand your hardware business. So I'll just give you one example. So when we raised our seed round, we invested around 50 to 60% of it getting our own prototyping workshop, right? So so we told it out front that we'll be spending 70 lakhs to get the ecosystem up for it, because if we're gonna depend on outside ecosystem, we're not gonna succeed, right? So now you tell this to somebody who doesn't know the hardware business, that would be a big no for you, because we spend our 40% or 50% of seed money on the third day we got it, because we were setting up CNC machines, lathe machines and things like that, right? So one very important thing that you really got to look at it, that will he understand your business in the operational sense, not only in the business sense, right?
That's a great answer there, because that's the thing about matching your needs with the kind of investor which you're going for, right? Just super critical. We are sort of like running out of time. Let me ask, is there anything else in the panel, any point which any of the panelists wanted to make? I just want to make a couple of other points before we wrap. Yeah, please.
Maybe it's just an observation. I don't say that it's a very popular problem, but especially in the very early stage, I think it's very important to sort out the cap table among the co-founders. What we don't want is to get into that discussion, because a lot of times it's very casual in the initial phases, including taking money from uncles and aunts, etc. And what is interesting is once somebody puts a valuation, what is given as a goodwill becomes equity. So we are stuck in some deals for 6 months because somebody said, oh, that's what 5 crores is it? Then they want equity now. So I think it's good to clean up your cap table, especially among the co-founders and any hand loans you have taken, a little more formal ways so that it is a bit clean. It is very difficult to sort it out once somebody is interested to invest in you, and then we spend the next 6 months to just sort out, who is on debt, who is on equity, and who owns what.
Makes sense.
I think that's one thing I would like to add. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
Just in terms of admin affairs, I guess please hire a company secretary to do a lot of your compliance-linked work. We're getting killed right now. I can pretty much talk about, burning our time because a lot of these cleanups will be required at the time of raising funding. So have a company secretary always spend on that to clean it up. And the second quick point I would make is I think timing is very important. Is something I've learned now, or I'm learning now. When to go to an investor and to what stage of investor is very important. So again, discuss with your advisors. When you've got that big customer deals happening, when you've got the PR support going for you, when you've got real and foreseeable traction happening, just going during that time and making a good investment happen is probably very important. Sripad, maybe you can talk about that.
I think timing, right? That's what Tushar is saying, that when the wind is behind you, then you can make certain decisions. I would say right now the wind is sort of like nice, but 2009 and 2010, when some of these companies started, it was not nice. I'll just leave with a lot of points have been covered, and I just wanted to make three points which are sort of like the red flags which I have seen in my experience, and you might want to think about it. One of them is that you hear a great pitch and you find that the market opportunity is clear as mud, meaning that you just can't understand like what is the size of this opportunity, how big is it, and you have to really help the investors understand that. They really don't know. If Akash comes and says, I'm doing warehouses, I want to know how many warehouses there are, how many packages you are going to be shifting, how many more warehouses will get constructed in the next 5 years. Please help me with all this information. I'll assume what all you're saying is true. This is like a great dynamic, right? Low level of knowledge, high level of knowledge. Use that to your advantage and tell us that you're doing a big opportunity. If that's missing in the business plan, I think something very fundamental is missing. The second one is, my customer is everyone. Okay, that's not true. Your customer is something who looks like a certain person, who sits in a certain chair, has a certain set of problems. Very important to say that. And the more narrow you say, the more interesting it actually gets. And entrepreneurs like to make it big by saying my customer is everyone. That's not how the opportunity becomes big. It's by targeting a specific customer in a large domain, right? And finally, I would say this is just as an exercise when you're thinking about the problem yourself or expressing it, which is asking yourself the question, for this to be really, really mind-blowingly successful, which is what it should be because you're spending really precious time of your lives on it, what is it that I'm assuming is going to be true? Another way of putting it is, what am I betting on? I'm betting that this is going to happen. Tushar's betting that obesity is going to continue to remain a problem, and he'll be able to target them through Facebook, and his his solution is actually good. Jas is presuming that there are enough small businesses out there, all of whom expect to be online, and even the panwala will get more business because of it. You're making certain assumptions, and the more you actually write it down and tell the people who are on the other side of the table that when you put money on this business, are betting on these things. It's like you're solving the other guy's problem, right? Because my problem at the end of hearing a pitch is that what am I betting on? That's what I'm actually asking myself. And that is something which I have to derive as an exercise for the reader at the end of the day. And it's not easy, right? But if you help the investor, it just becomes a bit more easier. We're running out of time. So I think the panelists and myself will be around in case you want to catch up. Thank you very much.